it still is their home. This is home right here. But they moved to other parts of the country, and but they came back today to share some testimonies about what God did in their lives over the past years and what this church meant to them as they grew up in this church. Ladies are always first. I mean, maybe that's politically incorrect these days, but my mom still taught me that ladies were first, so I think that that's where I'll keep that growing. Choir's got to find a place to sit. Rusty, I don't know where you're going to sit. Just sit on somebody. If you can't find a place, just sit. I told you to have just sit on somebody. So if they sit on you, that'll be great. So, but it's wonderful to have. This is a normal crowd, Edie. We usually have this many here. I guess I need to tell that's not the truth, not always, but it's good to have all of you here. There's a joy here that I sense that is in our hearts. As I call these three people, I said, would you do something? I'd like you to pray about this. It was almost like, no need to pray, I want to do that. There was such a joy in their heart that they were asked, and it was an honor, is what I was told, and it was a privilege. And it is our privilege today to hear three people who have become very successful in their worlds, and we're grateful for that success. The first is Sharon Simmons, and we're going to, in your bulletin, we're going to just switch up a little. We had Rick, but we're just going to have Michael be last, because we've got a treat right after he speaks for us today. It's going to be another thing, so it's great. So I invite Sharon to come and speak now to your heart.
Gerald told me to get a microphone, but y'all think I need it? No, okay. You know, that's funny because my mom said I never needed a microphone either.
Yeah.
But speaking of my mother, so when I was younger, one of my favorite memories in this church, and those of you who grew up will remember this, we have prayer meeting on Wednesday night. And during some times on prayer meeting, Preacher Eki would invite people to give their testimony or just give a praise or something. And my mom would sit there and, you know, every time somebody would finish, she would do this at me. And I was like, what? I don't want to get up in front of the church and speak. But then Daryl called, and I felt God going, and I was like, okay. So I knew right then that I better get up. But I wanted to stand in this area, particularly today, to speak, and for several reasons. But the first, I'm going to take you guys down a little memory lane trip with me. It was here that my parents stood with the pastor in 1965 and dedicated a baby, a very beautiful, tiny baby, to the help of this church and the promises of this church that they would raise this baby in love and teach the love of Jesus Christ. A few years later, this beautiful tiny baby grew up and became a member of a little group called His Children. And that was a little children's choir that sang, and we would sing songs that we had learned at Bible school and church camp. And a few years later, I stood in this area, and I received my own Bible from the United Methodist Women when I graduated from high school. Then a few years later, I stood again in this church, in this area, beside my sister, who married the love of her life. I think that's still true. And then a few years later, I stood here again as she christened her son, Ryan, my first nephew. And then a few years later, I stood here and lit an Advent candle in honor and memory of my father, who helped raise me in this church. And I started thinking about all those things, and I realized that this church was such an instrumental part of my life growing up. And these events that had meant so much to me all were tied around this church. And when I called Holly and told her I was coming home, and I said, well, she said, what's the topic on that you have to speak on? I said, well, it's homecoming. She said, well, that's easy. Wesley's Chapel. I mean, the minute you say home, you automatically think of Wesley's Chapel, and she's right. And I like to say that I was raised not in this church, but by this church. You know, I know all of you have heard so many dedications of children. And to me, one of the most important parts of that foundation is when the preacher asked the congregation to help raise these children. And that's what this church did for me. But of all the events that happened in this church, of all the things, the monumental things in my life that happened, the most powerful one was being taught how to love Jesus. And it's, you know, I just cannot thank this church for providing me with that foundation. You know, no matter where I've gone, this is my home, but the reason it's my home is because I learned the foundation of how to love Christ. And I can't, anything in my life that strays from that, it's just, this is so important to me. And to look and see all these faces that are a part of that foundation just blesses me beyond measure. I cannot thank you enough for providing that for me. And so when people ask me, what does Wesley Chapel mean? I say it's where you go to learn to love the Lord. You know, church worship has changed so much lately, but the thing that I think people don't get is that the whole purpose in coming to this church is so you can worship God, and so you can thank Him for all the blessings in your life. It's not about what you're going to get from it, it's about what you can give. And this church has always, always provided an opportunity to be able to give to the Lord. And I just thank you. So from that beautiful little baby to this beautiful woman standing